can produce really intensely mineral and very distinctive wines that are dramatically different from the wines that come from the volcanic soils in the north. And it's special, but it's really a tiny part of all of Beaujolais. So what the rest of this country was historically, this part, was a polyculture of beef cattle, Charolais beef cattle, orchards, so cherries, peaches, apples, pears, and truck farming. So that truck farming, we use that to be all kinds of produce farming. And it was actually the source of the good material, the fantastic food material, that went to Lyon and made Lyon emerge as the center of modern, great classic French cuisine. That's what it was historically up until past the Second World War. It was not wine country down here, except in this little tiny area southwest of Villefranche where you have yellow limestone. That's really what you're supposed to do. So here, hold that thought. Here it's 1961, and here's a cattle guy, and he's driving his truck down to Lyon to a customer who has a little restaurant, a bistro in Lyon, and he has a side of beef in his truck. He's taking down to his customer, but because he's so fortunate, located here, that he has a little bit of yellow limestone, he also grows gamay on that limestone, and he has a little barrel of wine for his customer too, which is nice. This is right at the beginning of the time when world food geek travelers were beginning to descend on Lyon like flies. No, international affluent travelers wanting to taste the great cuisine of Lyon. This is what's happening here. This is so exciting. Going to France and eating our way through France. It was the beginning of this tremendous movement. So imagine later on in January, here's a guy from Stuttgart. And he's in the bistro. Wow, this pièce de Charolais. Wow, this is so good. And what is this wine? This wine. Wow, this is unique. I never tasted wine like this before. It's perfumed, it's fine, but it's not big, and it's refreshing. Washes down this beef. And the proprietor says, well, it comes from a tiny producer who's he also grows the beef you have. It's a really little production wine, beautiful crafted thing, and it's our local wine. We call it the new wine. We call it Beaujolais Nouveau. So, but it was a fine crafted, genuine artisan, low yield, special place expression of a culture. Quite a varied rural culture here, because the guys grow peaches. They have things to say. Guys who grow turnips and people who raise cattle. They all have something to say. There's a rich rural culture. So it's called Beaujolais Nouveau. Well, this was fascinating to the guy from Stuttgart and the guy from New York and the people from San Francisco and the couple from Shanghai. And naturally, being humans, they have a pleasant experience like that. They want to duplicate the experience later on. So worldwide demand growing, albeit slowly at the beginning, for a wine that could never satisfy it because it can only come from this one little place here. So naturally, an opportunity existed for the big money up here, Louis Jadot, and a brilliant idea here, big money, Georges Duboeuf, went down here to the cattle guys and the peach guys and the turnip farmers, handing out cash. And you can guess what happened. It took about 15 years, 20 years. One of the most beautiful polycultures in France, a jewel in the patrimoine of French agriculture, was transformed into a poisoned desert monoculture of Gamay, where it shouldn't grow. And it doesn't give good wine, it gives oceanic quantities of junk. In order to satisfy demand for a newly highly marketed cultural phenomenon worldwide called Beaujolais Nouveau. Has nothing to do with the little wine that the guy from Stuttgart tasted when he was in the bistro in Lyon tasting a real wine. Nothing to do with it. But it infused a tremendous cash prosperity into this thing, but it diminished the culture because now everybody's just doing the same thing. All that, a tragedy, yes, okay, but today the tragedy is much more serious. It's that the market now, international market, has been there and done that, and now doesn't care It's like, yeah, Beaujolais Nouveau, and yeah, who cares about that stuff? You know, somebody may do it once, you know, but no, people don't care. Now you have Georges de Boeuf goes down to the co-op. Sorry guys, we don't need the wine. Sorry guys, we don't need the wine. Sorry guys, we don't need the wine. Well, these guys can't grow back their orchards, and they can't raise cattle anymore on the land that was poisoned by herbicides in order to grow these immense volumes of liquid out of Beaujolais trained young Gamay vines growing where they don't belong. They can't do anything with it. And today, what was such a beautiful polyculture is now one of the most depressed agricultural communities in France as a result. And compounding the tragedy of that, which is probably the most serious, but is that producers like Domaine de Crête, and even more so, wonderful producers in the Volcanic Hills area, which is the traditional wine culture. I can think of one, my friend Patrick Brunet, who's in the village of Fleury, and makes spectacular Fleury in Morgon. He has to sell more than half of his production in bulk because there don't exist enough serious wine drinkers who will accept to drink Beaujolais. I'm too sophisticated to drink Beaujolais. I don't drink Beaujolais. They're obliged to sell their production in tank to Georges de Boeuf. Why? Well, Georges de Boeuf buys an ocean of junk, watery, silly, overcropped junk because it's cheap. And then with judicious purchases, small judicious purchases, relatively, because you're talking about millions of cases here, small judicious purchases of excellent wine from individual growers to season the big vat, to raise the quality level just to barely acceptable. So it leaves wonderful producers being obliged to sell their product in bulk for the benefit of a product they don't believe in anyway. And that's a sad thing. That I will hold out a bottle when my customer says, Greg, I'm going to grill some chicken thighs and sage. What do you recommend? I want to give him a bottle of Fleury from Patrick Brunet, but I dare not mention that it's Beaujolais because I will hear that. Oh no, yeah, something better than that, Greg. You know me, I'm sophisticated. That's a compounding tragedy of Beaujolais, and why, caring as I do about these people, like the Brunets and Sylvain and his dad, who's lonely and wants to tell me for hours stories about his cousins who've lost everything in a single generation as a result of bad, short-sighted decision to leave their farming and go into this thing. I will always be a champion of this kind of Beaujolais as Burgundy. This is Burgundy. That's why it's in this taste.